It's always the same advice, repeated so often it becomes background noise. Don't open strange emails, don't click suspicious links, don't reply to messages that make your skin crawl. But advice is easy to ignore when you're tired, when the world is quiet, and the only light in your apartment is the blue glow of your laptop screen. Midnight is a strange hour. It's when the rules of the day seem to loosen, when your mind drifts, and the boundaries between what's real and what's possible start to blur. That's when mistakes happen. That's when you reply to an email you should have deleted. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd fall for something like that. I work in IT. I know the tricks, the scams, the social engineering. I've given the presentations, written the warnings, even laughed at the stories of people who got caught. But that night, I was tired. I'd been working late, patching servers, chasing down a bug that refused to die. My inbox was a mess, 100 unread messages, most of them junk. I was just about to shut down when I saw it, a new email, subject line blank, sender address a string of random letters and numbers. I should have ignored it. I should have flagged it as spam and gone to bed. But something about it caught my eye. Maybe it was the timing, midnight exactly, as if whoever sent it was waiting for the clock to strike 12. Maybe it was the emptiness of the subject line, the way it stood out among the clutter. Or maybe it was just the exhaustion, the way it dulls your instincts and makes you curious about things you'd normally avoid. I clicked it open. The body of the email was short, just a single line, "Are you awake?" No signature, no greeting, nothing to identify the sender. Just those 3 words, hanging in the digital void. I stared at it for a long time, my finger hovering over the delete key. But I didn't press it. Instead, I found myself typing a reply, almost without thinking. "Who is this?" I hit send. The message vanished into the ether, and for a moment, I felt a wave of embarrassment. What was I doing? This was exactly the kind of thing I warned people about. I was about to close my laptop when the reply came, almost instantly. "Thank you for responding. I was worried you wouldn't." The word sent a chill down my spine. There was something off about them, something too formal, too precise. I checked the sender's address again, but it was still just a jumble of characters, no domain, no way to trace it. I ran it through every tool I had, but nothing came up. No IP, no metadata, nothing. It was as if the email had materialized out of thin air. I should have stopped there. I should have shut down my computer, unplugged it, and gone to bed. But I didn't. Instead, I typed another reply, my curiosity now fully awake. "Who are you? How did you get this address?" This time, the reply took longer. A minute passed, then 2. I started to think the conversation was over, that whoever was on the other end had lost interest. But then the next message arrived. "I've been trying to reach you. You're the only one who can help." I frowned. The only one who could help? Help with what? I glanced at the clock, 12:07 a.m. The apartment was silent, the city outside reduced to a distant hum. I felt a strange sense of isolation, as if the world had shrunk to just me and the glowing screen. "What do you want?" I typed, my fingers trembling slightly. The reply came almost immediately. "I need you to listen. Please don't ignore me. If you do, something bad will happen." I stared at the words, my heart pounding. This was getting ridiculous. It had to be a prank, some kind of phishing attempt, maybe even malware. I hovered over the message, ready to delete it, but something stopped me. The tone was different from the usual scams. There were no links, no attachments, no requests for money or passwords. Just a plea for attention, a sense of urgency that felt almost real. I took a deep breath and typed, "What are you talking about?" The next message was longer. "I know you're tired. I know you want to go to bed. But you can't. Not yet. There's something you need to see. Something you need to understand. If you close your laptop now, you'll regret it. Please. Stay with me. I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead. The rational part of my brain screamed at me to stop, to walk away, to treat this like any other scam. But another part, the part that had always been drawn to mysteries, to puzzles, to the things that didn't make sense, kept me glued to the screen. Fine, I typed. I'm listening. The reply came instantly. Thank you. I don't have much time. They're watching. I need you to do exactly as I say. I hesitated. This was the point where most people would bail, where the scam would reveal itself, where the request for money or access would come. But the next message was different. Go to your window. Look outside. Tell me what you see. I frowned, glancing over my shoulder at the darkened glass. My apartment was on the 5th floor, overlooking a quiet street. I stood up, laptop in hand, and walked to the window. The street below was empty, the only movement the flicker of a broken streetlight. I typed back, nothing. It's empty. The reply was immediate. Look again. Look closer. I pressed my face to the glass, squinting into the darkness. For a moment, I saw nothing. Then, in the pool of light beneath the street lamp, I saw a figure. Tall, thin, standing perfectly still. I blinked, and it was gone. I stumbled back from the window, heart racing. I typed, there was someone there. Who is it? The reply came, colder than before. They're here for you. Don't let them in. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. The words seemed to pulse with a life of their own, each letter digging deeper into my nerves. I wanted to laugh it off, to tell myself it was just a trick of the light, a shadow cast by a passing car, but the street was empty. No cars, no footsteps, just the echo of my own breathing and the faint hum of my laptop's fan. I typed, what do you mean? Who are they? The reply came, slower this time, as if the sender was choosing their words with care. They come when you answer. They watch for replies. Most people ignore the message. Most people are safe. But you replied. Now they know you're awake. A chill ran down my spine. I glanced back at the window, half expecting to see the figure again, but the street was as empty as before. I tried to steady my breathing, tried to remind myself that this was just a prank, some elaborate social experiment or a bored hacker with too much time. But the fear was real, and it was growing. I typed, what do they want? The answer was immediate. They want you to open the door. They want you to let them in. If you do, you won't come back. No one does. I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. I looked at my apartment door, the deadbolt locked, the chain drawn tight. I'd always felt safe here, 5 stories up, far from the chaos of the city below. But now, the walls felt thin, the locks flimsy, as if they could be brushed aside by whatever waited outside. I tried to think rationally. This had to be a joke. Maybe someone was outside, watching, waiting for me to panic. Maybe they'd hacked my webcam, maybe they were trying to scare me into doing something stupid. I reached for a sticky note and covered the camera, just in case. I typed, this isn't funny. I'm calling the police. The reply came, they can't help you. They never see them. Only you do, now. Only the ones who reply. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the trackpad. I could call the police. I could call a friend. But what would I say? That I got a weird email and saw a shadow on the street? That I was scared of something I couldn't explain? I knew how it would sound. I knew what they'd think. I typed, what do I do? The answer was simple. Don't open the door. No matter what you hear. No matter what they say. Don't let them in. I sat back, staring at the screen. My apartment was silent, the only sound the distant rumble of the city and the soft tick of the clock on the wall. I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, that this was just a story, a bit of midnight paranoia. But then, as if on cue, there was a knock at the door. It was soft at first, almost polite. 3 gentle raps, barely loud enough to hear. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Another knock, louder this time, more insistent. I stood up, laptop still in hand, and crept toward the door. "Who is it?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Just silence, thick and heavy. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No one there. I backed away, my skin crawling. I typed, "There's someone at my door." The reply came instantly. "Don't answer. Don't speak. They'll try to trick you. They'll sound like someone you know. Don't believe them." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. This was insane. It had to be a prank. But the fear was real, and it was growing with every second. The knocking came again, louder, more urgent. Then, a voice. Soft, familiar. "Hey, it's me. Open up. I forgot my keys." It was my friend's voice. The one who lived down the hall, the one who sometimes crashed on my couch after a late night. But I knew he wasn't here. I'd seen him leave hours ago, heading out for the weekend. I typed, "They're pretending to be my friend." The reply, "Don't trust the voice. It's not them. They know what you fear. They know what you want. Don't let them in." The voice outside grew more desperate. "Come on, man, it's cold out here. Let me in. Please." I backed away from the door, my hands shaking. I wanted to believe it was just a coincidence, that my friend had come back, that this was all some elaborate joke. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I typed, "How do I make them go away?" The answer was slower this time, as if the sender was struggling. "You can't. Not now." You replied. "You let them see you. All you can do is wait. Don't open the door. Don't reply to any more messages. Don't acknowledge them. If you do, they'll come closer." I sat down on the floor, back against the wall, laptop balanced on my knees. The knocking continued, relentless, the voice outside growing more frantic, more pleading. I tried to block it out, tried to focus on the screen, on the words that had started this nightmare. I typed, "Who are you?" The reply came, softer than before. Someone who made the same mistake. Someone who replied. "I'm sorry." The screen flickered, the cursor blinking in the empty reply box. I stared at it, my mind racing, my heart pounding. The knocking stopped. The voice fell silent. For a moment, there was nothing but the hum of my laptop and the sound of my own breathing. I waited, barely breathing, listening for any sign that the thing outside my door was still there. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating, broken only by the faint whir of my laptop's fan. I wanted to believe it was over, that the voice and the knocking had been some kind of hallucination brought on by exhaustion and fear. But I knew better. The apartment felt different now, smaller, colder, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I glanced at the email thread, half expecting another message to appear, but the screen remained still. The last words from the stranger, "I'm sorry," hung in the air, a final warning or maybe a confession. I tried to close the laptop, but my hands wouldn't move. It was as if the act of shutting the screen would make everything real, would seal me in with whatever I'd let into my life by replying. I forced myself to stand, to move away from the door, to check the windows and the locks. Everything was as it should be, but nothing felt safe. I turned on every light in the apartment, hoping the brightness would chase away the shadows gathering in the corners. But the light only made the darkness outside seem deeper, more absolute. I sat back down at my desk, staring at the inbox. The message was still there, the sender's address a string of nonsense, the subject line blank. I hovered over the delete button, but I couldn't bring myself to press it. What if deleting it made things worse? What if it was the only thing keeping the thing outside at bay? My phone buzzed, startling me. I grabbed it, desperate for a distraction, for a connection to the world outside. It was a text from my friend, the real one, the one whose voice I'd heard at the door. The message was simple: "Hey, made it to my parents' place. You good?" I stared at the screen, my mind racing. I wanted to call him, to hear his voice, to make sure he was really where he said he was. But I was afraid. Afraid that if I called, the voice on the other end wouldn't be his. That whatever was outside my door could reach through the phone, could mimic the people I trusted most. I typed back, "Yeah, all good. Just tired. Have a good weekend." I hit send, my hands trembling. I wanted to tell him everything, to beg him to come back, but I couldn't. I didn't want to drag him into this, whatever this was. The minutes crawled by, each one heavier than the last. I tried to distract myself, scrolled through social media, watched mindless videos, anything to keep my mind from circling back to the email. But nothing worked. Every shadow seemed to move, every creak of the building made me jump. Then, at 12:33 a.m., another email arrived. Same sender, same blank subject line. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it. "Are you still there?" I hesitated, remembering the warning, "Don't reply." But the urge to answer was overwhelming, a compulsion that felt almost physical. I wanted to scream at the screen, to demand answers, to beg for help. But I forced myself to stay silent, to close the email, to do nothing. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The urge to reply grew stronger, a pressure building behind my eyes, in my chest, in my hands. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch, a voice whispering in the back of my mind, urging me to respond. I stood up, pacing the apartment, trying to shake the feeling. I splashed cold water on my face, stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My eyes looked wild, haunted. I barely recognized myself. I went back to the laptop, determined not to open the email again. But as soon as I sat down, another message appeared. "Please. I need to know you're safe." The words twisted something inside me. They sounded so sincere, so desperate. I wanted to believe that whoever was on the other end was just as scared as I was, that we were in this together. But I remembered the warning: don't reply. Don't acknowledge them. I closed the laptop, forcing myself to walk away. I turned on the TV, hoping the noise would drown out the silence. But every channel was static, every show a blur of meaningless images. I turned it off, the silence rushing back in. The knocking started again. Louder this time, more insistent. The voice outside was different now, deeper, colder, less human. "Let me in. I know you're awake. I know you can hear me." I pressed my hands over my ears, trying to block it out. But the voice was inside my head now, echoing through my thoughts, growing louder with every second. I grabbed my phone, desperate for help. I dialed 911, my fingers fumbling on the screen. The call connected, but all I heard was static. Then, a voice, my own voice, distorted and hollow. "You shouldn't have replied." I dropped the phone, heart racing. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I stumbled back to the laptop, opened it, hoping for another message, another warning, anything. The inbox was empty. I stared at the screen, willing something to appear. But there was nothing. Just the blinking cursor, waiting for me to type. I realized then that I was alone. Truly alone. Whatever I'd let in, whatever I'd answered, it was here now. It was part of me. The knocking stopped. The voice fell silent. The apartment was still. I sat in the darkness, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the blank subject line, the string of random characters, the words that had burrowed into my mind. I kept replaying the sequence of events, searching for a moment where I could have stopped, where I could have chosen differently. But the truth was, it all felt inevitable. Like the email had been waiting for me, like it had known I would answer. The hours dragged on. I watched the sky outside my window shift from black to gray, the city slowly waking up beneath a layer of fog. The world looked normal, untouched by the terror that had gripped me all night. But I knew better. I could feel it, a weight pressing down on my chest, a sense that something had changed. I tried to go about my morning routine. I made coffee, showered, dressed for work. But everything felt wrong, out of sync. The coffee tasted bitter, the water ran cold, my clothes felt too tight. I kept glancing at my laptop, half expecting another message to appear. But the inbox was empty, the screen blank. I told myself it was over. That I'd made it through the night, that whatever had happened was just a bad dream. But the feeling of unease wouldn't leave me. It clung to me like a second skin, invisible but suffocating. I left my apartment, locking the door behind me. The hallway was empty, the air stale. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, my footsteps echoing in the silence. Outside, the street was quiet, the usual morning rush muted by the fog. I walked to the subway, head down, trying to blend in with the crowd. At work, everything was normal. My coworkers chatted about their weekends, the office buzzed with the usual Monday energy. But I felt like a ghost, drifting through the day, unable to focus. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every time an email notification popped up, my heart skipped a beat. I tried to tell myself it was just anxiety, that I was overreacting. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It followed me through meetings, through lunch, through the endless stream of tasks that filled my day. By the time I got home, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My apartment was just as I'd left it, lights off, laptop closed, everything in its place. But the air felt heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. I hesitated at the door, keys in hand. For a moment, I considered going somewhere else, anywhere else. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Whatever I'd let in, it was with me now. There was no running from it. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me. I turned on every light, checked every window, every closet, every corner. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of the fridge, the distant sounds of the city outside. I sat down at my desk, staring at the closed laptop. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to see what might be waiting. But the urge was too strong. I lifted the lid, the screen flickering to life. The inbox was still empty. No new messages, no replies, nothing. I let out a shaky breath, relief and disappointment mingling in my chest. I tried to distract myself, watched videos, scrolled through social media, anything to keep my mind occupied. But the fear was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A new email. Same sender, same blank subject line. I stared at it, my hands trembling. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to know what it said. But I couldn't help myself. I clicked. "Are you alone?" I didn't reply. I closed the email, shut the laptop, turned off my phone. I sat in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the building settling, the distant traffic, the hum of the city. But the question echoed in my mind, over and over. "Are you alone?" I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure beneath the streetlight, the shadow at my door, the words on the screen. I tossed and turned, the sheets twisted around me, sweat soaking my skin. At some point, I must have drifted off, because I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing. Another email. Same sender, same blank subject line. I opened it, my heart pounding. "Don't ignore me." I stared at the screen, fear and anger warring inside me. I wanted to scream, to throw the laptop across the room, to run until I couldn't run anymore. But I knew it wouldn't help. I knew there was no escape. I typed a reply before I could stop myself. "What do you want from me?" The answer came instantly. "I want you to listen." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that pressed down on me, suffocating and absolute. I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and sat in the darkness, waiting for whatever would come next. The next day, I tried to pretend everything was normal. I went through the motions: shower, coffee, work, but the world felt distant, like I was watching it through a pane of glass. My co-workers' voices sounded muffled, their faces blurred at the edges. I kept checking my phone, my email, half expecting another message to appear at any moment. But the inbox stayed empty, the phone silent. For a while, I almost convinced myself it was over. But the feeling of being watched never left. Every reflective surface, windows, computer screens, even the stainless steel of the office coffee pot, seemed to hold a shadow that didn't belong. I caught myself glancing over my shoulder, searching for something I couldn't name. My nerves were frayed, my thoughts scattered. I barely made it through the day. When I got home, the apartment felt colder than usual. I turned on the lights, checked the locks, tried to settle in. I made dinner, but the food tasted like ash. I left the TV on for background noise, but every commercial break seemed to stretch into silence, the static between channels growing longer, deeper. At 11:58 p.m., my phone buzzed. Another email. Same sender, same blank subject line. My hands shook as I opened it. "Are you listening?" I didn't reply. I closed the email, set my phone face down on the table. But the urge to respond was overwhelming, a pressure building in my chest. I tried to distract myself, read a book, played a game, anything to keep my mind off the message. But the words echoed in my head, relentless. At midnight, another email arrived. "Don't ignore me." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I wanted to delete it, to block the sender, to do anything but reply. But I couldn't. It was as if the act of not responding was worse than anything the message could say. I typed, "What do you want?" The reply came instantly. "I want you to see." The lights in my apartment flickered, then went out. The TV died, the hum of the fridge faded. I was plunged into darkness, the only light the pale glow of my laptop screen. I stood up, heart racing, and moved to the window. The street below was empty, the city silent. No cars, no people, just the distant glow of streetlights swallowed by the fog. Another email arrived. "Go to your door." I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to stay put. But my feet moved on their own, carrying me to the front door. I pressed my eye to the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the air felt wrong, thick, heavy, charged with something I couldn't see. Another email. "Open the door." I shook my head, backing away. "No," I typed, my hands trembling. The reply was immediate. "Open the door." The knocking started again. Slow, deliberate, each knock echoing through the apartment. I pressed my back against the wall, clutching the laptop to my chest. The voice came next, low and distorted, as if it was being played through a broken speaker. "Let me in." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block it out. But the voice grew louder, filling the room, pressing in from all sides. "Let me in." I covered my ears, but the words burrowed into my mind, repeating over and over. "Let me in." I opened my eyes, tears streaming down my face. The laptop screen flickered, the inbox filling with new messages, each one the same. "Let me in." I slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing in the darkness. The knocking stopped. The voice fell silent. I sat in the darkness, shaking, waiting for something, anything, to happen. But the silence was worse than the noise. It pressed in on me, suffocating, absolute. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, hours, it all blurred together. At some point, the lights flickered back on, the hum of the fridge returned, the TV blared to life. The world snapped back into focus, but nothing felt the same. I opened the laptop, dreading what I'd find. The inbox was empty. No new messages, no replies, nothing. I let out a shaky breath, relief and dread mingling in my chest. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I heard the voice, felt the pressure of unseen eyes watching me. I tossed and turned, the sheets twisted around me, sweat soaking my skin. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were filled with shadows, figures standing beneath streetlights, faces pressed against windows, hands reaching for doors that wouldn't stay closed. I woke before dawn, heart racing, the taste of fear still sharp in my mouth. I sat in the darkness, waiting for the sun to rise, for the world to feel normal again. But I knew it never would. The days that followed blurred together, each one a copy of the last. I went to work, answered emails, sat through meetings, but I was never really present. My mind was always elsewhere, circling the same questions, replaying the same moments. I stopped sleeping through the night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same scene, the blank email, the figure beneath the streetlight, the door rattling on its hinges. I started leaving the lights on, every room in my apartment glowing at all hours, but the shadows still crept in. I tried to talk to someone about it, to explain what was happening, but the words caught in my throat. How do you tell someone you're being haunted by an email? That you're afraid to check your inbox, afraid to answer your phone, afraid to be alone in your own home? I rehearsed the conversation 100 times, but every version ended with the same look of concern, the same gentle suggestion to get some rest, to take a break, to see someone about your anxiety. So I kept it to myself. I went through the motions, pretending everything was fine. But the fear never left. It followed me everywhere, on the subway, in the office, even in crowded places where I should have felt safe. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt into my throat. Every time I saw a new email notification, I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. One night, I decided to fight back. I sat at my desk, the apartment silent around me, and opened my laptop. I stared at the inbox, daring it to fill with new messages. Midnight came and went, but nothing happened. No emails, no knocks, no voices. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. I started to type a message, not to the stranger, but to myself. A journal entry, a record of everything that had happened. I wrote about the first email, the figure outside, the voice at the door. I wrote about the fear, the sleepless nights, the sense of being watched. I wrote until my hands ached, until the words blurred together on the screen. When I finished, I saved the file and closed the laptop. I felt lighter, as if I'd finally taken control. I went to bed, the lights still on, and drifted into a restless sleep. But the relief didn't last. The next night, the emails returned. The first one arrived at 12:01 a.m. Same sender, same blank subject line. Did you miss me? I stared at the screen, dread settling in my stomach. I didn't reply. I closed the email, tried to ignore it. A minute later, another message. You can't ignore me forever. I shut the laptop, unplugged it, and shoved it under the bed. I turned off my phone, pulled the battery out, anything to cut myself off from whatever was reaching out to me. But the fear didn't fade. It grew, filling every corner of the apartment, pressing in on me from all sides. The knocking started again, louder than before. The voice returned, softer this time, almost gentle. Let me in. I just want to talk. I pressed my hands over my ears, rocking back and forth on the floor. I tried to remind myself it wasn't real, that it was just a trick, a hallucination brought on by stress and exhaustion. But the voice was so convincing, so familiar. It sounded like my mother, my best friend, my own voice echoing back at me. I stayed like that for hours, refusing to move, refusing to answer. Eventually, the knocking stopped. The voice faded. The apartment was silent again. When I finally opened the laptop, the inbox was empty. No new messages, no replies, nothing. I let out a shaky breath, relief and dread mingling in my chest. But I knew it wasn't over. It would never be over. Not as long as I remembered, not as long as I was afraid. I started to wonder if anyone else had experienced this. If there were others out there, haunted by the same emails, the same voices, the same fear. I searched online, scrolling through forums and message boards, looking for stories like mine. I found a few vague posts about strange emails, about voices in the night, about doors that wouldn't stay closed. Most were dismissed as pranks, as urban legends, as the ramblings of people who'd spent too much time alone. But a few felt real. Too real. They described the same details, the blank subject lines, the random sender addresses, the compulsion to reply. The warnings not to answer, not to let them in. I reached out to one of the posters, desperate for connection, for understanding. I sent a message, careful not to include any personal details, just a simple question: did it ever stop? The reply came hours later, just as the sun was rising. No. But you learn to live with it. I stared at the screen, the words burning into my mind. I wondered if that was true, if I could ever learn to live with the fear, the uncertainty, the sense that something was always waiting just out of sight. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. I started to notice changes in myself. Subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. I became hyper-aware of every sound, every flicker of movement in my peripheral vision. I jumped at the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant siren wailing through the city night. I stopped inviting friends over, stopped answering calls, stopped replying to texts. I told myself it was just to keep them safe, but the truth was, I didn't want anyone to see what I was becoming. My apartment became a fortress. I added extra locks to the door, taped over every window, unplugged every device that could connect to the internet. I even bought an old analog clock, just to have something in the room that didn't rely on a screen. But none of it helped. The emails still found me. Even with the laptop powered off, even with the phone battery removed, the messages would appear, sometimes scrawled on scraps of paper slipped under the door, sometimes whispered in the static between radio stations, sometimes scratched into the condensation on the bathroom mirror. I tried to ignore them, to pretend they weren't there. But the more I resisted, the more insistent they became. The messages grew bolder, more personal. They referenced things no one else could know, childhood memories, secrets I'd never told anyone, fears I'd never spoken aloud. They used the voices of people I loved, people I missed, people I'd lost. One night, I found a message written on the inside of my bedroom window. The words were simple, but they chilled me to the bone. Why won't you answer? I wiped the message away, but it reappeared the next morning, clearer than before. I started to wonder if I was losing my mind, if the stress and the fear had finally pushed me over the edge. I considered seeing a doctor, getting help, but I knew what they'd say. I knew how it would sound. I tried to distract myself with work, with chores, with anything that would keep my mind occupied. But the fear was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. I stopped sleeping altogether, afraid of what I'd see when I closed my eyes. I started to hallucinate, shadows moving in the corners, voices whispering my name, hands reaching for me in the dark. One evening, as the sun set and the city lights flickered on, I sat at my desk, staring at the blank screen of my laptop. I hadn't turned it on in days, but the urge to check my email was overwhelming. I fought it as long as I could, but eventually, I gave in. The inbox was empty. For a moment, I felt a wave of relief. Maybe it was over. Maybe I'd finally broken free. Then, at exactly midnight, a new message appeared. Same sender, same blank subject line. Are you ready to listen now? I hesitated, my hands trembling. I knew I shouldn't reply. I knew it would only make things worse. But the urge was too strong. I typed a single word. Yes. The reply came instantly. Good. Now, open the door. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I didn't want to move, didn't want to obey. But my body felt disconnected from my mind, my legs moving on their own. I walked to the door, every step heavy with dread. I pressed my ear to the wood, listening. Silence. I reached for the lock, my hand shaking. I turned it slowly, the sound echoing through the apartment. I opened the door. The hallway was empty. No one there. Just the dim glow of the overhead light, the faded carpet stretching into darkness. I stepped back, closed the door, locked it tight. I returned to the laptop, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Another message. Thank you. I stared at the screen, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The apartment was silent, the world unchanged. But I knew, deep down, that something had shifted. That a line had been crossed, a door opened that could never be closed. I sat in the darkness, the glow of the laptop screen the only light in the room, and waited for whatever would come next. The days after I opened the door were different. Not in any way I could explain to someone else, but I felt it in my bones. The air in my apartment was heavier, as if every breath took more effort. The lights seemed dimmer, the shadows deeper. I found myself checking the corners of every room, convinced I'd see something lurking just out of sight. I started to forget things, small things at first, like where I'd left my keys or whether I'd locked the door. Then bigger things. I'd lose hours at a time, coming back to myself standing in the kitchen or staring out the window, no memory of how I'd gotten there. The emails changed, too. They stopped arriving at midnight. Now they came at random times, 3:17 a.m., 2:42 p.m., 7:09 in the morning. Sometimes I'd wake up to find a new message waiting, sometimes I'd be in the middle of a meeting at work and my phone would buzz with that familiar blank subject line. The content changed as well. The messages grew longer, more detailed, as if the sender was getting comfortable, settling in for a conversation that would never end. One message read, "You're doing well. Most people don't make it this far." Another, "It's easier if you stop fighting." I tried to ignore them, to delete them without reading, but the words stuck in my mind, repeating themselves over and over. I started to hear them even when I wasn't looking at a screen, whispered in the hum of the air conditioner, hidden in the static of the radio, echoing in the silence between footsteps. I stopped going to work. I told my boss I was sick, that I needed time off. He sounded concerned, but I could hear the relief in his voice. I knew I hadn't been myself lately. I barely left the apartment, only venturing out for food or to walk around the block when the walls felt like they were closing in. But even outside, I felt watched. Every stranger's face seemed to linger on me a moment too long, every passing car slowed as it went by. One afternoon, I found a letter slipped under my door. No envelope, no address, just a single sheet of paper with the words, "You can't go back." The handwriting was neat, almost elegant, but I didn't recognize it. I tore it up and threw it away, but the message stayed with me. I started to dream of the emails. In my dreams, the messages were endless, filling my inbox faster than I could delete them. Each one was a command, "Open the door. Let me in. Answer me." I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, the words still ringing in my ears. One night, I woke to find my laptop open on the desk, the screen glowing in the darkness. I was sure I'd shut it, but there it was, a new message waiting. "Are you ready to see?" I didn't reply. I closed the laptop, unplugged it, and shoved it in a drawer. But the next morning, the message was waiting for me on my phone, on my work computer, even on the old analog clock I'd bought, the hands frozen at midnight, the words, "Are you ready to see?" scratched into the glass. I started to wonder if I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. Maybe the emails were just a symptom, a manifestation of some deeper illness. But the fear was real, and it was growing. I tried to reach out to the person who'd replied to my message on the forum, but their account was gone, their posts deleted. It was as if they'd never existed. I searched for other stories, other people who'd experienced the same thing, but every lead ended in silence. The isolation was suffocating. I stopped answering the phone, stopped checking the mail, stopped opening the blinds. My world shrank to the size of my apartment, the glow of the laptop screen, the endless stream of messages. One evening, as the sun set and the city outside faded into darkness, I sat at my desk, staring at a new message. "Come downstairs." The days after I opened the door were different. Not in any way I could explain to someone else, but I felt it in my bones. The air in my apartment was heavier, as if every breath took more effort. The lights seemed dimmer, the shadows deeper. I found myself checking the corners of every room, convinced I'd see something lurking just out of sight. I started to forget things, small things at first, like where I'd left my keys or whether I'd locked the door. Then bigger things. I'd lose hours at a time, coming back to myself standing in the kitchen or staring out the window, no memory of how I'd gotten there. The emails changed, too. They stopped arriving at midnight. Now they came at random times, 3:17 a.m., 2:42 p.m., 7:09 in the morning. Sometimes I'd wake up to find a new message waiting, sometimes I'd be in the middle of a meeting at work and my phone would buzz with that familiar blank subject line. The content changed as well. The messages grew longer, more detailed, as if the sender was getting comfortable, settling in for a conversation that would never end. One message read, "You're doing well. Most people don't make it this far." Another, "It's easier if you stop fighting." I tried to ignore them, to delete them without reading, but the words stuck in my mind, repeating themselves over and over. I started to hear them even when I wasn't looking at a screen, whispered in the hum of the air conditioner, hidden in the static of the radio, echoing in the silence between footsteps. I stopped going to work. I told my boss I was sick, that I needed time off. He sounded concerned, but I could hear the relief in his voice. I knew I hadn't been myself lately. I barely left the apartment, only venturing out for food or to walk around the block when the walls felt like they were closing in. But even outside, I felt watched. Every stranger's face seemed to linger on me a moment too long, every passing car slowed as it went by. I stood in the lobby, staring at the open elevator. The light inside flickered, casting long, shifting shadows across the cracked tile floor. My heart pounded in my chest, every instinct screaming at me to turn and run. But my feet wouldn't move. The phone in my hand buzzed again, another message appearing on the screen. "Don't be afraid. This is what you wanted." I wanted to throw the phone away, to smash it against the wall, but my fingers tightened around it. I stepped forward, each footfall echoing in the empty space. The elevator doors seemed to widen as I approached, the light inside growing brighter, almost inviting. I stepped inside. The doors slid shut behind me with a soft hiss, sealing me in. The panel was old, the buttons worn smooth by countless fingers. There were no floor numbers, just a single button marked B. I pressed it, and the elevator lurched downward, the sensation of falling sharp and sudden. The descent felt endless. The lights flickered, the walls groaned, the air grew colder with every passing second. I tried to steady my breathing, to remind myself that this was just an elevator, just a building, just another night. But the fear was overwhelming, a living thing that pressed in from all sides. Finally, the elevator shuddered to a stop. The doors slid open, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor. The walls were lined with old, peeling wallpaper, the floor covered in a threadbare carpet. At the far end of the hallway, a single door stood ajar, a faint light spilling out into the darkness. I stepped out of the elevator, the doors closing behind me with a final, echoing clang. The corridor was silent, the only sound the soft thud of my footsteps on the carpet. I moved toward the door, each step heavier than the last. As I reached the end of the hallway, I hesitated. The light from the room beyond was warm, almost comforting, but something about it felt wrong. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was small, furnished with a single table and 2 chairs. On the table sat an old laptop, its screen glowing with the familiar blank subject line. Across from the laptop, a figure sat waiting, their face hidden in shadow. I froze, unable to move, unable to speak. The figure gestured to the empty chair. "Sit," they said, their voice soft, familiar. I sat, my hands trembling. The figure leaned forward, the light catching their face. It was me. Or rather, it was a version of me, older, tired, eyes hollow and dark. We stared at each other in silence. The laptop chimed, a new message appearing on the screen. "Do you understand now?" I shook my head, unable to find my voice. The other me smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "You replied. You let them in. Now you're here, just like I was. Just like everyone who answers." I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. The other me reached across the table, their hand cold and heavy on mine. "It doesn't end," they whispered. "Not for us. Not for anyone who listens." The laptop chimed again. Another message. "Welcome." The room began to fade, the walls dissolving into darkness. I felt myself slipping, falling, the world spinning away beneath me. I woke in my apartment, the morning sun streaming through the window. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream. But the phone on my nightstand buzzed, a new message waiting. "Did you sleep well?" I sat up, heart pounding, the fear as fresh as ever. I checked the locks, the windows, every corner of the apartment. Everything was as it should be. But I knew it wasn't over. I knew it would never be over. Emails kept coming, day after day, night after night. Sometimes they were simple, "Are you there? Did you miss me?" Sometimes they were longer, filled with memories, regrets, warnings. I stopped trying to fight them. I stopped trying to understand. I learned to live with the fear, to carry it with me like a shadow. I stopped replying, stopped opening the messages, but it didn't matter. The emails always found a way through. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the knocking at the door. Sometimes I hear my own voice calling from the hallway, begging to be let in. I never answer. I never open the door. But I know, deep down, that one day I will. Some nights, I sit in the dark, watching the cursor blink in my inbox, daring myself not to look at the new messages piling up. I tell myself I have a choice, that I can simply ignore them, that I can reclaim my life if I just refuse to play along. But the truth is, the emails have become a part of me. They're woven into the fabric of my days and nights, a constant presence just beneath the surface of everything I do. I hear them in the silence between words, see them in the flicker of streetlights outside my window, feel them in the cold that settles in my bones when the sun goes down. I've tried everything to break free. I changed my email address, bought a new phone, moved to a different apartment on the other side of the city. For a while, it seemed to work. The messages stopped, the nights grew quieter, the world felt almost normal again. I started to believe I'd escaped, that I'd left the nightmare behind. I went out with friends, answered calls, let myself laugh at things that weren't funny just because it felt good to pretend. But the peace never lasted. One night, as I was walking home, my phone buzzed. I almost didn't check it, but old habits die hard. The screen was blank, no number, no sender, just a single line of text, "Did you forget about me?" My heart sank. I knew, in that moment, that I could never outrun what I'd let in. The emails returned, more insistent than ever, finding me no matter where I went or what I did. I started to notice other people, too, strangers on the subway, co-workers in the break room, neighbors in the hallway, glancing at their phones with the same haunted look in their eyes. I wondered how many of them were living with the same fear, the same endless messages, the same sense of being watched. I wanted to reach out, to ask if they understood, but I was afraid. Afraid that speaking the words aloud would make it all real again, would give the emails more power than they already had. Sometimes, I think about the first night, about the moment I chose to reply. I replay it over and over, searching for a way to undo it, to take back that single, careless response. But there's no going back. The line was crossed, the door opened, and now I live with the consequences. I've learned to live with the rules. Never reply after midnight. Never open the door, no matter who's on the other side. Never trust a voice that sounds too familiar, a message that knows too much. I keep my routines, keep my head down, try to blend in. Most days, it works. Most days, the emails are just background noise, a low hum of dread that I can almost ignore. But some nights, the rules change. Some nights, the emails are different, longer, more urgent, filled with details I don't remember sharing, memories I thought I'd forgotten. They ask questions I can't answer, make promises I know are lies. They tell me things about myself that no one else could know. On those nights, I feel the fear creeping back in, cold and sharp, settling in the pit of my stomach. I wonder what would happen if I replied again. If I gave in, just once, and answered the questions, followed the instructions, opened the door. Would it end? Would the emails stop? Or would I just sink deeper, lose myself completely to whatever waits on the other side of the screen? I don't know. I don't think I ever will. The world outside keeps moving. People go to work, fall in love, make plans for the future. I watch them from a distance, a ghost in my own life, always waiting for the next message, the next knock at the door. I wonder if they know how close they are to the edge, how easy it is to slip, to make a single mistake that changes everything. Sometimes, I want to warn them. I want to stand on a street corner and shout, "Don't reply. Don't answer. Don't let them in." But I know it wouldn't matter. No one listens until it's too late. No one believes until they see the emails for themselves, until they hear the voice at the door, until they feel the cold hand on their shoulder in the middle of the night. So I keep my silence. I keep my secrets. I live with the fear, with the knowledge that I am never truly alone. The emails are always waiting, always watching, always ready to remind me of the choice I made. If you're reading this, if you've ever received a strange message in the middle of the night, if you've ever felt the urge to reply, don't. Delete it. Block the sender. Turn off your phone, unplug your computer, do whatever it takes to keep the door closed. Because once you answer, once you let them in, there's no going back. I wish I could tell you there's a way out, that the fear fades, that the messages stop. But I can't. All I can do is warn you, hope you listen, hope you make a different choice than I did. And if, one night, you hear a knock at your door and a voice you trust calls your name, remember this, it's not them. It never is. Don't reply.